What's going on, guys? In the works, and we're playing a little CSGO today, and I figured since we're going to be talking about something that doesn't directly relate to Battlefield, we'd mix it up a little bit for the sake of variety. But I'm playing in here with a bunch of people you'll probably recognize. I think there's a few bots towards the beginning, but towards the end I think they finally filter out some of the bots. But this was mainly just for fun anyways. It wasn't any sort of display of skill, because I am really not that great at this game. I mean, I could get good scores sometimes, but when it comes down to it, I'm definitely not a CSGO player. I wish I was a lot better, but this is a fun game, and it kind of relates to what we're going to be talking about today, which is the $80 game rumor that was out there a few weeks ago. So a lot of you guys may be like, well, Jake, you're a little late to the party on this, and that was by design. I wanted the dust to kind of settle a little bit. I've had this idea that I wanted to talk about the $80 game thing for the longest time, and in hopes of getting a more intelligent, more in-depth conversation, I decided to wait a little bit. So let's talk about the reason why I picked CSGO to be the background of this, because everybody loves Steam, and Counter-Strike has always been the flagship game. Maybe Counter-Strike and Half-Life, since Counter-Strike technically is spawned from Half-Life, is the flagship game of Valve and Steam. And everybody loves Steam because they love cheap games. They want to get those Steam summer sales. And considering that CSGO was just on sale for $4, that's a heck of a deal considering that there's a lot of mods, there's a lot of maps to be had here. It's probably one of the best deals out there. So if you don't own CSGO and you can still find it for cheap, I highly recommend it. But that leads us into the debate, what is the fair price for games? And with EA, the rumor being out there that they're going to charge $80 for, next-gen console games, everybody was up in arms. They're like, this is ridiculous. This is taking our wallet, and they're just, trying to squeeze every last penny out of it. And on the surface, you're absolutely right. You're like, okay, yeah, they're really trying to milk the consumer for whatever penny they may have left in their pocket, which is true. But there's more to it than that. If you really sit down and think about the $80 game dilemma that's kind of been presented, you may not realize this, but you actually already probably pay $80 plus for games, especially if you play Call of Duty, especially if you play Battlefield 3. I mean, if you play Battlefield 3 and you're still playing it and you bought premium, you paid $60 for Battlefield 3. You paid $50 for premium. That means you paid $110 for that game. And, I know it really takes you a second to slow down and think about that, but $80 games are already here. I think what it's really going to be is if they raise the price on the actual games, what you'll probably end up getting is a better value out of said game. You maybe will get a little bit of discount. Let's say you pay $80 and you get the first two DLCs. A lot of people would say, well, why would EA do that? Because they'll technically lose money. Well, they won't. They're guaranteed to sell you that DLC if you pay $80 for the game. So from that standpoint, a business standpoint, it makes a little bit of sense. And you're probably like, as a gamer, I don't like this. This is taking the choice out of my hands. I want to be able to choose whether or not I want to invest money into this DLC. And I absolutely agree with that. I definitely see a lot of negatives that can come from this. There's a big debate about DLC. I mean, DLC is one of those really polarizing topics where it's like, well, some developers actually take content out of the game to make it DLC, and that's a super fair point. I mean, what we definitely don't want is a watered-down game and then having to wait later for the actual full parts of the game because they decided to make it DLC. I never want to see something like that happen. I mean, that's just shady. That's just not a good way to treat gamers, and I think that a lot of people have seen that with some games, but there are some positives that could possibly come from this type of business model. Now, EA has made some missteps in the past with, the online passes. That was pretty much a giant fail. They got rid of that. They were actually losing money on that, from what I understand. They were actually spending more with the administrations and just like the technical side of things that actually make online passes possible than they were actually gaining from the online pass. So, it didn't really seem to, keep people from buying used games either. So they definitely got rid of that, and the $80 game might be their less than traditional way to approach this. And on the surface, there's not a lot of positives. I know a lot of people are like, well, it's not fair. The consumer should be making the choice. If the game sucks, I don't want to buy DLC from it. But what if the game is good? What if it's one of those games where it's like, man, this was a really awesome game. It may not have sold that well, but it was an awesome game, and I really wish there was some DLC for it. When you pay a little bit more with that, you're already investing into that game, so it gives the developers, they have to. They know what they're getting into. They have to make the DLC. You paid $80 for this game, and Maybe it came with the promise that, hey, you're going to get the first 2 DLCs or something like that. So there are a little bit of incentives I can see from it, but from what we can really, sit down and grasp is that $80 games are already here. We already pay more than $80 for a lot of the games we play. I mean, if you play Dishonored, they just announced that, what is it, their third DLC, second DLC? That means that game now costs, I think, what is it, $15 per DLC. So that game now costs $80. So there we go, an $80 game, Dishonored, if you buy both the DLCs. So they're definitely already here. It's just more of a, how is EA actually going to approach, this price hike? Because there's going to have to be some sort of incentive. If they just say, well, you're going to get $80 games in the traditional format, that's not sounding like a very good deal to me. I mean, I think I may just stick to some of my Steam games. But if they're saying, hey, $80 games, but you're going to get the first 2 DLCs, similar to the way they do the Battlefield 3 pre-orders and the Battlefield 4, they're doing the same thing with that. Maybe there's a little incentive there to say, okay, $80 games may not be such a bad thing. But I know a lot of you guys will probably say, well, that'll just encourage them to get lazy about some of the DLCs. It won't encourage them to make good stuff. So it's definitely something to consider. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about the $80 games. Do you think that if it comes in the traditional format that it's just going to ruin EA? Because they're the only ones that have really been rumored to be attached to this higher price tag. Now, I could see Activision following suit. If EA does this and it's successful, you better bet that all the big publishers are going to follow in their footsteps. But, let's say EA does it and it doesn't really chime well with the consumer, which the consumer is king. When it comes down to it, if the consumer doesn't want to spend money on it, they're not going to do it. If it fails, you might see a lot of the good games that you like from EA not make a reappearance because, it's a really risky to take new IPs these days. So I'm actually curious which way this goes, so let me know what you guys think about this whole kind of debate. Would you rather see the traditional format with the choice of DLC, or would you be willing to pay $80 with the promise that you get the first 2 DLCs? So I imagine it's going to be pretty split down the middle, but I actually did pretty well in this game, all things considered, since I'm not really that great at CSGO. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you guys next time. Peace.